Welcome to the Nursing Post podcast, all nursing all the time with Ashley Moore and Rosa Horsley. In this episode, we have a guest speaker discussing their experiences with a recently completed at-home DNA test kit, and they are here to share the results with us.
So the nerd in me wanted to know how accurate an at-home DNA test kit was. And I thought to myself, what a better way to find out than to do it. So we asked my husband, JR, if he would be a willing participant, and he actually agreed. So he's going to be joining us today to reveal what his experience was in completing it, like the process he had to go through, and he's willing to share his results.
So thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast today and share your results.
Thank you guys for having me.
And I think the first thing is, why do a DNA test kit? Why would you want to do one?
I was just nosy and wanted to know more about my ancestors, more about where I come from. So I decided it'd be fun to do.
Okay.
So I guess my next question is, the kit was promised in 3 to 5 days. When did you actually receive it?
It came in about 6 days.
And what did you think of the instruction difficulty? Can you walk us through the process? Did you think it was difficult to actually complete? Were there simple instructions? What did you actually have to do?
The instructions were simple. You had to open the tube and you had to spit in the tube and fill the line. Once you filled the line, it had another sterilizing fluid that you had to puncture. And you seal the tube together, put it in a box, you seal the box together, and then you mail it back.
So fairly simple process. Nothing really time consuming or...
Oh, no, you can get it done in about 10 minutes or so.
So the results were promised in 5 weeks. When did you actually receive yours?
Well, the results got back in about 3 weeks, which was surprising. It said it would be more like anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. So it came back a little early.
Did you have any expectations of what you thought it was going to show? Like, did you just think it was going to just show your ancestry? Or were you specifically looking for any one thing? Like, looking at the results, of course, I know what they say ahead of time, but I wasn't expecting some of the specific traits and things.
The information that was provided.
Were you expecting things like that?
Honestly, I went into it with an open mind. I guess it was some things that I probably thought that it would say. And then there was some other things that I guess I never would have guessed. Like I had a general idea, but I wasn't 100% sure.
So there was actually a list of traits and corresponding percentages for each of those specific traits. I think that this is better at showing how accurate DNA testing is. It is not new information to the person completing the test.
No, but I think it helps validate it.
Yeah, so some of the traits that were actually listed included, I thought it was a little random, like I wasn't expecting it. So some of those traits included whether he had back hair or a bald spot or had dimples or even more random things like, a unibrow or bunions or flat feet. Like there's this whole list. I mean, it even goes into whether you like salty food or sweet food, what your ice cream flavor preference is, whether you like bitter tasting things. So it was just I don't know, I found it pretty random.
Well, and
interesting.
Some of the things that it showed, I thought was more of a learned traits, that they weren't necessarily genetic. I mean, they had fear of heights and fear of public speaking as traits that were listed, or characteristics, whatever you want to call them. And I'm like, that's genetic? That just seemed odd to me.
Yeah.
And the other one, of course, that I thought was most interesting is mosquito bite frequency. There's no hope for my kids. So I didn't know that was actually a genetic trait. So it was a long list.
Yeah.
Very long. Like we just threw a few out.
We didn't even probably cover a quarter of them.
Not at all. Were they 100% correct, JR?
Honestly, it was a few of them that could go both ways. But if I had to give it a percentage, I'd say anywhere between 75 to 80%.
I would say that's about accurate after looking at them with you. I don't know. I'm still kind of in awe. I just really didn't realize that some of these characteristics and traits would come back the way they did. I know for your case, or in this instance, the type of earlobe you had was not a correct match. And the fact that it said you had flat feet, it wasn't correct. And I personally thought that the sweet versus salty was incorrect. I myself find you a sweet snacker, but this test said that you were a salty snacker. So which one is it really?
Well, I like them both. I like sweets. I like salty stuff. And there was certain things in here that made me scratch my head. Like it said that I wouldn't like cilantro. I don't like cilantro. It says like my light hair, dark hair, like it's dark. It said something about certain toes being longer than the other one. And I mean, it was surprising.
Your ancestry composition, that was very detailed. So this part of the DNA kit shows your heritage, and you could actually see specific ranges of particular regions.
Yeah, it did narrow it down and become very, very specific, even more so than I even thought that it would be able to.
Absolutely. For example, JR, your West African percentage was broken down into 4 subcategories and then even smaller ones.
Yeah.
So
correct.
Can you tell us what your test result revealed?
All right. So when I actually looked in it, it told me that my DNA suggested that I was 31.9% Nigerian with ancestries from 13 different populations. When I looked in, it said 64.4% was West African, like you said, and then 31.9% was Nigerian, 17.4% was, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leone. These words are long, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but it says something like Senegambian and Guinea, 8.9% broadly West African, 8.3% Congolese and Southern East African, 5.5% Angolian and Congolese, and then it broke down into 1.1% in Southeast African, 1.7% in broadly Congolese, Southern African, and 0.5% African hunter-gatherer, and broadly Sub-Saharan African, 2.9%.
So were you shocked at all when you read the rest of your DNA test? Like, were you surprised to see that there were a mixture of other regions?
Honestly,
can you tell us what they were first?
I was a little surprised, but then I wasn't, because with that being broken down, I had 22.3% European, 18.4% Northwestern European, 11.3% British and Irish, French and German 2.2%, Scandinavian 0.2%, and broadly Northwestern European 4.7%, Southern European 1.9%, Spanish and Portuguese 1.6%, and broadly Southern European 0.3%, and broadly European 2.0%.
I think this goes to show us that no matter who you are, you're not any one of anything.
You're not 100% of anything. Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I mean, the way they break that down, that's surprising, and it's extremely broad as far as to every piece of like the continent in which you can look back and see that you have relatives in all of these areas. It's pretty neat.
And it's also broken down into a haplogroup, and I didn't know what a haplogroup was, so I had to look that up. And it's a genetic population or group of people who share a common ancestor on the patrilineal or the matrilineal. So if you have interest in specifically about your roots and how you came to live in a certain location, this would be great, because it kind of actually shows you how people traveled from one place to the next and that lineage. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really neat. So if you want to tie back to, well, how did I go from here to there to where I am now, you can actually do that.
Like, it broke it down real well.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I did some little research after. I noticed that if you get on Google, you can look at certain haplog groups, and it can show you the different patterns of migration that they had and how some people moved away from certain areas and over a period of time, made their way back to certain areas. So it's pretty neat.
I was surprised in this DNA kit that it also included family and friends, kind of like a family tree. When he got the results back and you go into the family and friends section, it brings up literally like a family tree, and down to every relative who had completed a DNA home kit of the same particular brand, they're on there. So just like a regular family tree, it would be like JR, then, the wife, and then the children, and then the grandparents, the uncles, everything. And it had showed where he had like second and third cousins on this family tree. And I thought, how amazing is that if you were really trying to find like a lost loved one and they end up taking an at-home DNA test, that they could be plugged literally into this family tree.
Yeah, through the website, they have, if you download the app, they do have like a digital version of that family tree in which is sort of set up like a Facebook or something. So if you wanted to tap and message someone that you might have been related to or just communicate them through the app, they do give you that option.
Some of the matches that were plugged into his family tree, were of British or Irish descent. So
sure.
To me, that just kind of blew me away. I don't know what I was expecting. What were you expecting that?
I guess kinda. Everybody knows through history about slavery and how people were brought over from other continents of the world. Sometimes when you look at that and you try to go back, like some of the information is you might not be able to get to it, to know where you come from. So it's kind of neat to be able to do that. And just through some things that happen, it makes sense that you can have all different types of DNA in your
hanging
body.
out in your family tree.
Absolutely.
I wonder if do you sign up for that? Is that something that they automatically do? Or do you have to sign like a disclaimer that you are okay being part of a family tree?
Well, I guess what they do once they do, like when they did my DNA test, I guess through my DNA matches, that anyone who matched my DNA that was on this site that was related, they already had it categorized for me to look at it. And like I said, I don't have to reach out to anybody, but if I wanted to, they do all of that for you.
But what if you didn't want somebody to be able to reach out? I wonder if there's an option to opt out of it.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure it is. They have different options to opt out of, as if I chose that after my test was done for my sample to be disposed of. They do ask you if you want them or could they use your sample to make the website better or to look further in depth about some of the information that's dealing with your DNA. So they do give you certain options in which you can decline certain options that they offer. But when I logged into it, they had already gave me an option to see people that shared the same DNA as I do.
Okay. So that's pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at less than a month, you had all that information?
Yes. And probably about less than a month. And I think they will continue to update more information to your account with them if they find anything else during the process, or anyone that could be related to you take a test, and they will add people into your people that you could reach if you want to. It was pretty neat.
So last question. Now that you have the results, what do you plan on doing with it? Are there other options or like add-on packages?
Yeah, there are plenty of add-on packages. One thing that I wanted to do is to get more detailed information about my close relatives to see if I could somehow link my current relatives back along this DNA family tree because I think that they did a great job with it. But if you want to start from the beginning and just know like what area you grew up in, what type of people shared your same DNA, but it wasn't very, very detailed to the point where you may have seen like your grandmom's grandmom or your dad's side of the family. So I think
the genealogy part, you want to build the genealogy tree.
Yeah, I just want to build it to see how much I could trace of it. And they do give you an option to have all of that information made into a book. So I think that eventually if I could trace everything back, that I'll get it put in the book so I can keep it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is really neat.
Something nice to be able to hand down to your children and their children and their children.
There are some people that really have that drive to want to know where they come from. And, I never really thought of it in the way when we were talking earlier that you had said there's some people maybe they feel like something's missing from their life and they want some more meaning or purpose, and helping them find their roots. They may find something that they love that never crossed their mind, because there's obviously a lot more that goes on to us that's not learned. It's genetic.
Oh, yeah. All the time. You never know who out there shares the same DNA that you share. People that you never would have guessed.
That's true. So the disclaimer part to all of this, just because there are always pros and cons,
yes,
is that these kits, they're not 100% accurate and they're not all inclusive. So genetic experts advise you to actually see your doctor regarding genetic testing for detailed and more comprehensive genetic and chromosomal testing. Of course, since we're not genetic counselors, we would suggest talking to your provider about it.
Right. Some of these kits go into your risk for medical and different diseases and things like that, and it may test for a couple of the chromosomes, but maybe not all of them.
Definitely. So this we did it at home for fun.
Right.
And yes, there's an add-on package in which you can, check your medical genetic breakdown.
Yes.
But this, like we're actually saying, is for at home. If you want a real in-depth, like medically significant breakdown of those markers, you should go see your doctor and have it done in office.
Right.
And instead of paying out of pocket, you never know. Your insurance might kick in, and
I'm sure there at some point it will pay for it, without a doubt. So I think we've learned a lot about what DNA can tell us, with the results that came in. And it's a great kit to learn about your lineage and your ancestors and where you come from, where those roots really, how far, they go. And with this particular kit, we didn't use it for the medical history, but
they do make it.
They have that option.
They do have it as an option.
So we leave it up to you guys, listeners, whether you want to take part of being included in the at-home DNA test kits and which package you're wanting. Several sites have options for at-home DNA test kits, and we will link those to our resources and in our references, as we always do.
So as always, you can go to our website, thenursingpostpodcast.com, to find all of our references and resources. We would love for you guys to join the conversation and leave a comment or a suggestion. If you guys like what we're doing, subscribe to our podcast, and you can listen to us on most podcast platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so you can find us just about anywhere.
Thanks again for listening to The Nursing Post.